Welcome to the Pot of Inquiry, the podcast for human optimization and understanding. I'm really excited to introduce my guest today, Joshua Ketner from the Dream Body Clinic in Puerto Vallarta, Mexico. They are doing some incredible things with stem cells and treating myriad diseases very successfully because they can actually do things with the cells that we cannot do here in the United States. So this discussion I think you'll find very interesting because we go into the physiology of stem cell treatments and administration, as well as some of the different conditions that they're very successful with. So I hope you enjoy this conversation that I have with Joshua Ketner, the Dream Body Clinic.
Welcome to the Pot of Inquiry. Ready for some thought-provoking cerebral whipping and the destruction of ridiculous medical dogma? Want to shift those stale, moldy old paradigms? Well then, don that thinking cap of yours. Get down in the cave and join our host, Dr. Stephen Barrett, for this week's episode. Let's start spelunking.
All right, everybody, welcome to the Pot of Inquiry. I have a great guest today that's going to talk about a great subject, and I think it fits into our optimization of being a human and human understanding. So, Joshua Ketner, welcome to the show, and thanks for taking the time to come on.
Oh, thanks for having me.
Yeah. So tell us about your clinic. You call it the Dream Body Clinic.
Yeah, so I guess we started with that name because we weren't thinking, stem cells weren't even a thing we were considering when we first started. I got into this because my dad had Lou Gehrig's disease. We were living up in Seattle. I kind of saw how just the system wasn't, I don't know, it feels kind of messed up when you're in that. Someone's got something terminal. Right. You start doing your own research. We looked into things like human growth hormone, testosterone. We're like, well, it's a muscle wasting disease. Why don't we try some other, if you got HIV muscle wasting, they throw that stuff at you. But of course, they decided that fell under the Anabolic Steroid Act. They didn't like that, couldn't get it. And that kind of led me on this journey. I ended up here in Mexico. So we still do that. We've got this legal flying by program. There's a lot of medicines you can get here that you can't necessarily get in the United States. And you're able to come down, get those and go home. And then we got into stem cells. That was about 9 years ago. You start hearing rumors that they're doing stem cell therapies in Mexico, and finally tracked it down, found a guy who did his PhD about 19 years ago. And he's a cellular biologist, also a gynecologist, learned some really cool stuff from him, but realized the quality control just wasn't quite there. Here in Mexico, it's, people tend to cut corners, I guess, unfortunately. So we had to go do our own thing. And we've got a great partnership with the University of Guadalajara. And we've been doing our own culturing and, process here for the past 8 years.
So explain to the people, I think there's less confusion about this now than there was like 10 years ago about the difference between embryonic stem cells and where you guys are sourcing your cells from. So talk to us about that so we get a clear delineation of what it is that you guys are really doing with what.
Yeah. So I guess the embryonic stem cells, those were all the rage early 2000s. People thought it was going to cure everything. And those are true stem cells. They can become any type of cell. The problem they found was that they can't really control what they turn into. So it was all that controversy with Bush banning it. Well, he didn't really ban it. His advisors said, hey, I don't think we should fund this. So he banned any federal funding for it. The state of California still spent about $2 billion researching it and basically couldn't get it to work. They kept turning into teratomas. They wanted to become babies. Where mesenchymal stem cells, we worked in the past with Dr. Arnold Kaplan. He's the man that named mesenchymal stem cells. He was a professor of the Skeletal Muscle Institute at Case Western University. And he found these cells that at first he thought like they were stem cells because in the lab, he could turn them into chondrocytes, into adipocytes, into osteocytes, these building blocks of certain tissues. Right. But, once he started injecting them into animals, he realized they weren't differentiating. They're not turning into different cell types. So when you use them in the body, they're really not a stem cell. So he went and tried to change the name. He wanted to call them medicinal signaling cells, but the name had already stuck. And so it causes a lot of confusion. So I like to describe them more as like the manager on the construction site. they're sending out signals, they're guiding this repair process. They're not really turning into different cell types, but you're getting that same desired outcome. You're finding that hearts are regenerating, you're finding nerves are regenerating, cartilage is regenerating, and it's not having to become those tissues. It's actually just guiding that repair process.
But these do have some pluripotentiality to them, do they not?
Yeah, they do, but it turns out that they usually won't differentiate until about 8 months to a year after you've put them in. And the problem is when they do differentiate, they'll have the donor's HLA. Like we take ours from umbilical cord tissue. So
Right.
it's 9 month old. There's no ethical concerns. It's tissue that would have been thrown away otherwise. It's the umbilical cord and placenta. And yeah, when they do differentiate, if they become a chondrocyte, if they become an adipocyte, they've got the donor's HLA. And that's the marker that tells your body this is your tissue. So your immune system will attack that and destroy it. So at first, though, they don't represent or exhibit HLA. They're considered immune privileged. So that's more on how they work is via the paracrine effect. It's these signals they're sending out, communicating, like guiding the repair process.
So in a way, it's just an upregulation of what we have versus
Correct.
replacement of tissue per se.
Completely. Yeah, it's been
Okay.
very confused that, and it's tough to find good info because, I mean, even if you go to some of these like top sites, like if you look at the Mayo Clinic's website, it tells you that, these do work like a stem cell. And the further they've researched, the more they found that's just not really true.
So you can take these from, and in the US, there's been some controversy and there's been some recent decisions in court fights. I'm aware of that as far as they'll take amniotic tissue or they'll take Wharton's jelly. And as long as it's minimally manipulated, I think that's the term that the FDA wants, then you can use that here. But that doesn't give you really enough amperage, so to speak, does it? As far as cell count or because you guys are actually culturing things, right? And
that's the big difference is that you've got minimal manipulation. And then the other rule they have is homologous use, which means like for like. Like we've worked with Dr. Jacoby. He's one of the top diabetic neuropathy surgeons in Scottsdale, and I have a really good video of him explaining those details on our YouTube channel if anyone wants a deep dive. But he would always argue that, hey, I'm fixing nerves, and technically there's a nerve going through the umbilical cord, and that's what we're using. So he could argue that, but it leaves this really vague area so that if the FDA or anyone wanted to come in and try to go after these labs or doctors, they could. So it makes it there's still no clearly defined rules. So people kind of consider it like PRP. If we do a liposuction, we take some fat or we chip into the bone marrow and in the hip and take some bone marrow. Well, we can put it in a centrifuge, add some collagenase, and we spin it up, and that'll separate the cells from the tissue, and you're left with this liquid. But what they won't tell you is that maybe 1% of that liquid, if you're lucky, is mesenchymal stem cells. So guys like Dr. Kaplan, I mean, I saw him yell at a group in Texas at a conference one time. He's like, that is a cell therapy. That is not a stem cell therapy. That's no difference than Coca-Cola selling you an apple juice saying all natural. Then you read the back label and it's 99% sugar and water. So that becomes the problem. You can use a whole umbilical cord in the US, which is the best way if you're going to do that, but only about 70% of what you're getting are MSCs. So we can isolate them, and then culture to get to pure isolation, which is the big difference. It's a more pure product.
How long does it take you to culture something? Let's say, and the one thing we should point out is you guys screen these folks really well.
Oh yeah.
So it's not like you're just picking up a placenta down at the hospital without any screening or anything like that. So after you do that, then take us through the process a little bit.
Sure. Okay, well, we have to start with where do you get your tissue, right? So It's not like people are handing out placentas and you can't pay for it because then it's like, you're trafficking human parts basically. So We work with a team of gynecologists that only work with first-time mothers, and they ask if they'd be willing to donate. So that kind of starts our pool, but then we need to refine that pool. And luckily, we only need one umbilical cord and placenta, maybe every 3 or 4 months. So we're getting a lot of cells from this is the good news. So we're not going through a lot, but we make sure that they're first-time mothers, they're married, they have to be between the ages of 18 and 25. We even check if they've had any COVID vaccines because some of our patients don't want any of that. Luckily, there's a federal database here we can screen against. We ask how many sexual partners. If they answer more than one, they're disqualified. And that's because an MSC, a mesenchymal stem cell, it couldn't carry a virus, but there's a less than 5% chance that if the donor had a retrovirus, that could be carried over. So still small, but those are usually sexually transmitted. So we're trying to get that as close to zero as possible. So then we screen the women, then we screen the isolated tissue, the umbilical cord and placenta, then we screen the isolated cells, and then we screen the cultured cells, and then we send it off to a third-party lab to verify all that. And we actually give all of our patients that analysis so they can see with the flow cytometry data that, look, this is, free of bacteria, free of endotoxins, free of retroviruses. It's a good, safe product that's not going to cause you any harm, basically.
Right. And so how many doses can you get out of one placenta?
It's a lot. I mean, most of our patients, like say you're doing a shoulder, we put 50 million in. If you've got an autoimmune disease, we'll do like a 300 million IV. So most of the people that come to us are doing tens or hundreds of millions of stem cells, and that'll last us like 3 to 4 months based on that. So we create the culture environment. So we do all that. Then you centrifuge the tissue. You start isolating. You create what's called the pellet. You're spinning it down. And then you take these flasks that you add your culturing medium to. You put these in the incubators, and we set them all at different settings so that it's kind of like baking. Every day you've got new batches coming out so that we don't have to freeze the stem cells, because you end up killing a lot of them if you have to freeze them. So we stagger our culture so that every day we can have new batches coming out. And each time the cells eat through the culturing medium, it's called a passage. So they're replicating the whole time. But we typically, the first 3 passages are just to isolate the stem cells, because the stem cells adhere to the plastic of the flask. Okay. And you have to do an enzyme flush to get rid of all the extra cells, because it's not a pure product at first. And usually about by the 3rd passage, we flushed out all those other cells. And then we'll go 2 more passages past that. So usually we're going like about 5 passages total. And you're getting a ton of cells from just one umbilical cord and placenta.
So just to clarify that, when a patient will come down and they regardless of what they're going to get, obviously you have probably different dosages for different indications, as you mentioned, the IV versus maybe a shoulder or something like that. Those are relatively fresh then. They're coming off the cycle or the culture cycle pretty fresh, and they're not frozen.
Completely, yeah. We don't want to deal with the frozen cells. I think it was Regenerative years ago did like a big study using the ones from Utah Cord Labs, because they can, again, take a whole umbilical cord and spin it up and take the cells, and they can offer that for per patient. But then they have to cryo freeze it, send it to these doctors. And if you just hold it in your hand and thaw it, there's a high chance you're going to kill most of those cells they found. It was on average 50% die off with those frozen cells. Yeah. And that was on average. A lot of them killed even more, especially if you have like these special like water baths to control the temperature and how fast it thaws, you can minimize that. But, most of these clinics aren't really teaching the doctors how to do that, and most of them don't want to take the time. So you just end up with a lot of die-off. So we just avoid that completely. And we're like, look, if you were doing treatment today, we would have taken your cells out of cultivation yesterday evening, and then we would have administered today. So we always administer within 24 hours of taking the cells out of cultivation. So that way we're not worrying about cell die-off. It usually takes about 3 days post taking them out of cultivation before you really see a dramatic decline in viability. So we just try to get them quick.
Kind of like a farm to table concept.
Yeah, basically, yeah.
So let's talk about after you administer them. So you are administering them depending on the medical indication. So for autoimmune, obviously that's an IV administration.
Yeah.
And before we continue with this great discussion, I just want to take a quick break to acknowledge this week's sponsor. I'm constantly exploring new avenues to enhance well-being and address any health concerns. Today, I'm thrilled to introduce you to an exciting supplement called Stem Regen, which I take daily and genuinely believe could revolutionize your health journey as well. Stem Regen stands out as a game changer in the realm of wellness. Crafted from 5 potent plant extracts, it boasts a remarkable ability to stimulate the release of your body's own stem cells from your red bone marrow. Why is this significant? Well, stem cells are the superheroes of our body's natural repair system. They possess the extraordinary capacity to morph into various cell types, aiding in tissue regeneration and repair. As we age, the quantity of circulating stem cells in our system reduces significantly, impairing our body's ability to heal and rejuvenate itself effectively. Stem Regen steps in to counter this decline by kickstarting the release of stem cells into circulation, thereby bolstering your body's innate repair mechanisms. Once unleashed into your bloodstream, these mobilized stem cells actively seek out areas of damage or injury, initiating the healing process. By incorporating Stem Regen into your daily routine, you're essentially empowering your body to tap into its own regenerative prowess more efficiently. I firmly believe that Stem Regen could be a valuable addition to your wellness regimen, especially if you're seeking to fortify overall health and vitality, accelerate tissue repair, or expedite recovery from injury or illness. This first of its kind stem cell mobilizer is changing the game in regenerative medicine. Don't wait to unleash your body's innate healing capabilities. Visit stemregen.co/Dr. Steven, that's with a PH, and use the code SBPOD to get a 15% discount off your first order of Stem Regen. Hey Spelunkers, we're thrilled to kick off Season 6 with a fresh new look and the most exciting content we've ever delivered. This season, we're diving deep into the fascinating world of human optimization and understanding. But wait, there's more. We're giving back to our loyal listeners with an exclusive giveaway each and every episode of Season 6. That's right, prizes are waiting just for you. So how can you join in on this fun? Well, it's simple. Follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. Subscribe to our YouTube channel, and here's the magic touch. Comment, "Let's Spelunk" on any of our Season 6 YouTube videos to enter. Of course, please add anything else you'd like to your review. Don't miss your chance to explore, learn, and win with the Pot of Inquiry. Let's spelunk into the wonders of Season 6 together. For, chondral deficits of the knee, it's going to be an intra-articular administration. But let's talk about after you administer it, regardless of the site. How long do these mesenchymal stem cells stay alive?
Well, it's tough to tell, right? I mean, they've done so many different studies where they'll put like a radioactive dye to kind of track it, and they usually lose them after the lungs when you do like say an IV. But the results are showing that they last longer. I mean, we usually see peak results 3 to 6 months post-treatment.
Okay.
And the furthest out I've ever seen like major significant improvement is like 9 months post-treatment. So we know that they're lasting that long. There's some other studies that indicate they stay in your system for about 8 months to a year. And that's pretty much what we see with our results. And I mean, we treat a lot of patients. We treat about 150 people a month. So we get real good feedback. And with that, you kind of start noticing, hey, okay, 3 to 6 months is usually peak, but there's a lot of people that it takes a little bit longer. And that kind of backs up those studies saying at that point, like some of them will stay in your system because they're technically a pericyte. They live on the outside of your capillaries, and some of them will find capillaries to call home and stay on there, where the rest will just stay free-bound in your system. And after that 8 months to a year, they tend to differentiate. And now they're going to turn into one of those like chondrocytes or adipocytes, and your immune system will recognize that it has the donor's HLA, it'll attack it and just remove it from your system. You won't even know it's happening. But that's why we don't see results like 2 years after, they're gone.
So in a case of let's say, have you treated anybody with Lyme disease? It seems to be a very tough autoimmune disease that's induced by a viral or excuse me,
Bacteria.
bacterial agent. But
Yeah. So we treated it. I took it off the website. Look, if I don't feel like we have around an 80% success rate, I don't like to really have it advertised. But we
right,
have helped a lot of people. And when we saw the biggest improvements is when we started adding, we found that doing an IV of around 1.4 million per pound of body weight is kind of the peak of this parabolic curve before it starts to flatten out and you
okay,
get diminishing returns. So for most people, that's a 300 million IV. And then once we added an intrathecal treatment with about 50 million, that's when we saw a bigger improvement with these Lyme people because the Lyme bacteria tends to hide. And one of those places seems to be kind of in the spinal cord or in the cerebral spinal fluid. And by getting it there, the stem cells send out a lot of what's called LL37. It's a peptide that acts kind of like a natural antibiotic. And it's why women don't go septic when they bleed every month because the endometrial tissue has the highest concentration of capillaries, thus the highest concentration of pericytes, which are your mesenchymal stem cells. And it launches out all this LL37 when they're bleeding and prevents sepsis. So we found with stomach issues, with Lyme, these different bacterial type issues, like it doesn't necessarily completely reverse it or cure it, but if they've weakened it enough beforehand,
right,
we've seen some real good results. So I always tell Lyme people like do a bunch of ozone, do these
right.
different protocols first to weaken it. But even then, it's like 50-50 if the stem cells are going to make like a massive difference.
So that's an important point, is that you obviously want to optimize the human in all aspects if possible,
Yeah.
so that you can stack this on. So the guy who comes down and has a big sugar addiction and is probably not the most metabolically in tuned individual is likely not to maybe have the success rate that somebody who's pretty judicious about diet, exercise, all of the pillars of health. They would be a more suitable candidate.
It depends on the condition because I mean sometimes it's frustrating.
Yeah.
See like an alcoholic will come in to fix their liver. I had a patient last week. He
Yeah.
came back to do his shoulder, and his friend came with him who was in renal failure. And he's like, yeah, he needs to come back, but he's out of renal failure from your stem cells, but he's still drinking. Dude,
Right.
like
Yeah.
why?
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
so it can be frustrating. You'll get a call from a guy who's diabetic and we've fixed his diabetes, but I had one guy call me from like he's at Buffalo Wild Wings slamming beer and wings. And, he's like, yeah, my blood sugar is perfect now. I'm like, no, it's not going to stay that way. So
Right.
I think it's more for maintaining it. Like, trust me, be healthy, but it's more post-treatment where you got to clean it up. Before isn't as important as I thought it would be.
Okay. But if they're good before, the likelihood of compliance after is probably going to be much higher.
Oh, for sure. Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
100%.
So what about intra-articular? Because there's some debate on that it really needs to be administered below the cartilage inside the osseous structure itself versus intra-articular. Help me sort that out because I really don't know
Yeah.
the answer to that. But I'm sure you've heard that, right?
Yeah, not a lot, really. I mean,
No?
the problem is once you're into the bone, like it has nowhere to go. So we found, like, say with the knees, we've had a lot. I mean, the good part is we have our own MRI machine where we do before and afters whenever we can. So, I
Right.
mean, I can show you enough MRIs to prove it's regenerating the cartilage to kind of dispel that. But the way
Right.
I look at it is, look, the IV is not going to do it because cartilage gets very little blood flow. So,
Mm-hmm.
the
Right.
IV is not the right way, but going intra-articular, you're kind of working from the outside in. You've got the structure there, and the stem cells, again, they're not becoming these cells, so they need to recruit help. So you just need them in that general area. They start recruiting different growth factors, recruit chondrocytes, put them at the area, and then it starts to regenerate. And I think actually back treatments kind of dispel that the best. And the reason why I say that is we do a lot of like herniated discs.
Okay.
And we don't go into the discs. We did in the past, we tried it,
Right.
but our protocol's always been like 4 shots at 25 million around. Like I had a herniated disc at L4, L5 about 5 years ago, and really bad sciatica. We injected around it, did an IV also, but the cells then the back decompresses at night when you're sleeping, and the cells can help rehydrate that disc and start getting it back to normal size and shape. Well, when we went into the disc, we never saw the disc improve height or size. We've only seen that with herniated disc by going around it, because once they're in the disc, they have no way to recruit help. They're stuck and they're not becoming new disc tissue. So it wasn't the right approach. And I kind of feel the same way with, going into the bone with a joint. So that's what we've seen.
That's interesting. And I think I would assume that knees would be one of your most common treatments, because it seems like,
number one.
Yeah, it seems like everybody I know, that they're complaining of knee pain. And the problem is up here. I don't know if you feel this way or not, but it seems to me that de facto you have knee pain, regardless of what the x-ray looks like, you're on the path to a knee replacement, because that's just the way the insurance system works. There's very little attempt at any regenerative therapy.
Yeah, that's the unfortunate part, is it's cheaper for them to just go get you a new knee than really look into other solutions. And because you can't really do this the right way up there, it's not even an option.
Right,
So.
right. So there's different stages of knee osteoarthritis. What's the success rate? I mean, obviously, if it's more mild, it's going to be a better success rate, but can you give me an idea on that?
Yeah, so for arthritis, I'd say stage 1, stage 2 for just about any joint. We probably have around an 80% chance of it being a one and done treatment, meaning you're pain-free, you've got the results you want, as close to perfect as you can get. About 15% of those people, they'll see improvement. Maybe they'll go from like stage 2 to stage 1, or stage 1 and slight improvement. But and then about 5% of people are just non-responders. That's pretty much across the board for any stem cell therapy. It's around 5%, even when you look at the studies, and then our practice has pretty well confirmed that too. But then stage 3 and stage 4 arthritis, the majority of people I've never seen anyone go from stage 4 to like perfect. It just doesn't happen.
Right.
You'll either see it stay the same, but you got rid of all the inflammation, so they feel way better, or you'll see them get to maybe stage 3. We've got quite a few MRIs like that, but the cool part is they can always come back again and do another treatment like a year later to keep that going. I have a handful of patients that have gone from stage 3 to like everything looks perfect. It's super rare, and the one thing I've noticed with cartilage is it's the real outliers, those people that have the most improvement, typically add the supplement. It's called undenatured type 2 collagen. So that seems to be like the real building block for cartilage. And we've seen the biggest improvement with patients that combine that with treatment.
Now, is that an intra-articular administration as well, or is that an oral supplement?
It's just an oral supplement. Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah, so I would assume that you would want to, augment as many things as you possibly can after you set the cells up and get them inside the joint. What about the 5% that are just the non-responders? Is there any idea of why they're non-responders? Their condition's too bad? They just don't have the right signaling response, or any hypothesis there?
No. I mean, the majority of them are people where it was just too far. It was kind of a Hail Mary last chance. But there's some, I don't know, half of those people or so are people you're just like, why didn't that work? They seem like a perfect candidate. You just didn't see any change. And no, really, really don't know with those. We're not sure.
And now a message from our sponsor. The power of ketones, your body's alternative fuel. The folks at Approved Medical Solutions have done it again. That's right, with their new Clean Ketones supplement. Imagine your body as a hybrid car capable of running on two different fuel sources. While glucose is your body's regular gasoline, ketones are like switching to an efficient, clean-burning alternative fuel. I would say rocket fuel. When your body produces ketones, whether through fasting, low-carb dieting, or intense exercise, something remarkable happens. These molecular powerhouses cross the blood-brain barrier, providing crystal clear mental energy that many describe as enhanced focus and clarity. But ketones aren't just brain fuel. They're efficient energy sources for your heart, muscles, and other vital organs. Think of them as premium-grade fuel that produces less metabolic waste than glucose processing. Research suggests ketones may offer additional benefits: reduced inflammation, improved metabolic health, and even potential neuroprotective properties. They're particularly interesting for athletes seeking sustained energy and anyone looking to optimize their cognitive performance. The best part? Your body is naturally designed to produce and use ketones. It's not about completely replacing glucose, it's about metabolic flexibility, giving your body the ability to thrive on both fuel sources. Whether you're interested in mental clarity, athletic performance, or overall health, understanding and harnessing the power of ketones might be your key to unlocking new levels of well-being. Approved Medical Solutions Clean Ketone Formula contains nature-identical ketones. These ketones provide the same fuel as those produced through a keto diet. Approved Medical Solutions Ketone Formula does not contain sugar, caffeine, or 1,3-butane-diol, and they are not ketone salts. I've been using them routinely now and notice a minimum of a 10% increase in exercise performance. By diving deep into cutting-edge research and real-world applications with leading scientists and practitioners, the Pot of Inquiry illuminates the science-backed path to enhancing your mind and body's potential. You can find us on all platforms, including Spotify and Apple Podcasts. Please join us. Well, I think it's pretty intuitive that if you're way down and, bone on bone and there's zero cartilage, you're probably not going to get a benefit.
Yeah, and that's why we really go out of our way to tell those people, like, we won't do treatment. If there's no cartilage, if you're not a good candidate, if we see a bunch of osteophytes forming, we're very upfront with people. We're like, look, you're not a good candidate. This isn't the right option for you. And, and it's to protect them and to protect us. Because,
Right.
Bad news travels much faster than good,
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. What do they say? A bad result will tell 10 people. A good result might tell one or two.
Yeah.
So, but no, I totally understand that. Now, aside from knees, what are some of the really incredible success stories that if somebody says, well, just name some of your greatest hits.
Yeah, well, I'd say the ones that consistently blow my mind, because these, medically you shouldn't be able to heal them, are hearts, congestive heart failure. We just we consistently hit home runs. I had a call from a guy the other day. He was so excited because 2 years ago, he was in congestive heart failure, around 30% ejection fraction. We did treatment a year ago, and we got him up to 55%, which awesome, right? That's normal. But he went to his cardiologist last week, and he called me right after he left because he was at 65%. Wow. And even his cardiologist was like, this doesn't happen. This isn't supposed to be possible. So yeah, the heart regeneration is just incredible consistently. And then nerve regeneration.
Before we get to nerve, I spent a lot of 38 years of nerve, but anyhow, really more like 21. But what about other conditions, maybe atherosclerotic cardiac issues? Anything on that, or is it mostly just congestive heart failure?
It's been mostly congestive heart failure. Yeah, okay. We've seen some other issues. You've seen some, like one lady had a heart attack and a third of her heart was necrotic after, and we were able to regenerate it to where there's no more necrosis. Like it's completely healed. It's incredible. But Yeah, but then when you start looking into like AFib, sometimes AFib, people will come out of AFib, but it's an electrical issue. So like it shouldn't unless it was some problem with the heart that wasn't quite what they thought it was. So AFib sometimes, but it's like that's why I don't have it as a treatment because it's some people come out, some don't. It's strange.
I just saw something the other day about post infiltration of the MRA agent and myocarditis that they're looking at that they they've identified or they have theorized that there is a an aberration in the cells themselves, the cardiocyte cells, that then causes an interruption in the conduction of the you know the regular beat or whatever. It's basically cellular damage and not just an inflammation. It would seem that might be a benefit for that type of a condition.
Yeah, I mean, we have treated myocarditis and had
Yeah,
success there. It just hasn't been a lot of patients.
yeah. That's
Yeah,
probably because they don't know about it, because
yeah,
there's a lot of it out there for sure, unfortunately, and in very young people. Uh,
yeah.
well, what about, let's talk about nerve, because that's kind of what I've done, had a
Yeah.
big focus in. So, um,
Yeah, so
the,
nerves, I mean, I had sciatica 5 years ago, and within 10 days post-treatment, it was gone. It's incredible what they do for nerves. The newest studies they've shown, they used to think like the new blood vessels, like VEGF, would go to the area and start creating new blood vessels, get some blood there, that was actually leading the way, and then the nerve followed. But the new studies are showing it's crazy. It's like I like to picture that movie Doom. It's like the stem cells riding on the back of this big worm, which is your new capillary. And it's up there launching out different signals to the nerve, guiding the way as it's building that new blood vessel to the area. So it's all working in conjunction is what they're finding. So it's they're marking out where that nerve needs to go and where to send, these neurons and send out neurotrophic factors to guide it. And it seems to just get there and start regenerating. It's been really incredible to see people with nerve pain just heal up.
Now that's got to be an IV administration combined with maybe some perineural infiltrations, or how are you administering that?
It depends on the nerve, right?
Right,
So if it's herniated disc, you need to go into the back because we need to
right.
take that pressure. It sort of reroute the spinal cord nerves around that herniation, which is like what it did for me because the lower back pain and the herniated disc, that wasn't healed for about 3 months. So I know right away it was kind of rerouting that around the impingement, got me pain free, and I've never had pain again since. We had a police officer got shot through here, and I mean, he's really
Brachial plexus.
strong. Yeah, and it,
Yeah.
it bounced around, also knocked him down, hurt his neck, hurt his shoulder. He was all beat up, barely survived. And his whole arm was just atrophying. He's a really strong guy, and his left arm was getting so tiny from all the nerve damage. And, we did IV plus direct injections to the area, and his arm's back to normal now. So we've
Wow.
seen it with a lot of people. Yeah.
So that would probably be one of those things where you would administer it, then they would come down 6 months, 9 months later, and maybe have another go to,
Depending, I mean,
yeah.
it depends if it's needed. There was another guy before we got on this call, actually. He's a diabetic and he's got a diabetic ulcer growing on his foot. And, since treatment, he did it on March 11th. His blood sugar is already back in order and his diabetic ulcer is starting to heal back up.
And that
And
was IV administration?
yeah, and that was, well, we
Wow.
did one shot to the foot and then we
Yeah.
also did the IV, and yeah, it's healing back up. So it's really cool to see.
Yeah, no. Those success stories just, they just warm your heart when you can see something, because a lot of times you're pulling people out of the fire and
Yeah.
they don't really have any place else to go. And, I don't want to say you're kind of the court of last resort, but sometimes you are. And,
Yeah, totally.
and when you can turn those folks around, what a gratification that is.
Yeah, no, it's fun to see.
So, let's talk about how they can get down to your clinic, find your clinic. How long do they have to stay there? I mean, I imagine, that depending on the areas that are going to be infiltrated, it may be a different time course. So give the
Sure.
folks an idea of that.
Yeah, so I mean, we're really busy, but we're always trying to fit as many people in as we can. I mean, we're not trying to be the biggest clinic in the world. So, like I said, we
Right.
probably treat around 150 people a month and don't really want to get bigger than that. We're
Okay.
busy enough. But we have people scheduled by first, they go to the website. I've gone out of my way to build it so it has all the information, it has prices. I hate it when you can't get real straight answers, like links to studies, testimonials, everything's there so people don't have to, guess on anything. The price there is final, all that. And then to book, well, I always have them call up the clinic. We talk with them, make sure they're a good fit. If they've got some scans already for their issue, like an MRI or some heart scans, great, send it. We'll review it, tell them if it's even worth coming. And then if it's like an IV treatment, it's a 4-day trip. It's like day 1, arrive and rest, day 2, blood work, day 3, we're doing treatment, day 4, you could fly home. If it's a joint, we add an extra day. It's 5 days because day 1's arrive and rest, day 2's blood work and MRI. We've got our own MRI on site, so it makes it easy. Day 3, we sit with the doctor and we review it. So, we actually will spend as much time as is needed reviewing the blood work, making sure they understand it, reviewing the MRI image by image so they know what's going on. If that makes sense, great. That's when we take payment because we're not going to take the cells out of cultivation till that evening. So we have to take payment before so we don't get stuck with those. And then the next day's treatment, and it's truly the most anticlimactic thing you'll ever do. A
Right.
couple of quick pokes. It doesn't take a lot of time. You're like, really? That's it? And then it's tough because results aren't instant and people are
Right.
so used to like take a pill, pain's gone. Well, no, it's going to take a few months.
Right.
You take it easy, and yeah, it's usually like a 4 or 5 day trip for most things.
Well, it's fascinating. How do they find you, Josh?
I mean, people find us just, different videos they hear about us. It's mostly referrals at this point because we've been
Mhm.
doing this so long. Like you said, it's you help someone out. Well, they're going to tell their friends and family, maybe 2 or 3 people, but that
Right.
starts to snowball and just keeps you busy.
Right. And they can go to your website, which is Dream Body Clinic, or it's
Yeah,
yeah.
all the info's there, just www.dreambody.clinic. You can scroll down the homepage and there's just links to all the treatments that makes it real easy to navigate. And then they can call us. The phone number's right there on the site. They can call up. We'll answer any questions they got. We do free consultations and good to go.
And you're in Puerto Vallarta?
Yep, Puerto
Okay.
Vallarta, Mexico. It's like West Coast, middle of the country, big tourist town.
Right.
I know people worry, oh, Mexico, it's dangerous. But look, I grew up in Seattle. I've lived here for 17 years. It's the safest place I've ever lived. I mean, it's just a big tourist town. It's great. It's like we call it cheap Hawaii. It's like jungle
Yeah.
mountains meets Pacific Ocean. It's a great vacation spot.
Very cool. Thanks so much for coming on, and I look forward to hearing more great stories from you. And I think this is kind of the wave of the future. It's very sad that we can't get this type of care here in the United States, but maybe that'll change. I don't
But
expect it soon, but thanks so much. Appreciate you coming on.
no, thank you.
As you know, I'm passionate about learning new ways to address health concerns. Moreover, before I recommend any treatment or supplement, I always try it on myself. Today, I want to share my experience with Troche. I have investigated other phytocannabinoid formulas and found that, in general, they were not consistent or reliable in their results. What impressed me about the Troche delivery technology is that each rapid-release tab is engineered to provide fast-acting, long-lasting, reliable delivery of phytocannabinoids to support your health and well-being. Many physicians understand the importance of using phytocannabinoids for physical discomfort, sleep issues, and mood. But if the formula is not reliable, most patients will give up, never experiencing the real benefits. I put this to the test on myself and actually tracked my progress. This graph shows my results for reducing stress. Troche is so serious about how well their product works they partnered with People Science to provide the Troche Tracker health assessment application that lets you monitor your progress and works with you to accomplish your wellness goals. If you are a patient, click the link below and the patient button to register for Troche Tracker. Assess your baseline health metrics and receive a free Troche sample in addition to getting preferred patient pricing on all products. If you are a clinician interested in adding Troche to your practice, click the link below and then the clinician button to register for a wholesale affiliate account or go to the link above. I hope you all enjoyed today's show and got some truly empowering knowledge out of it. You can always follow up on anything we talked about in the show notes found at our website, podofinquiry.com. If you think you might have tickled just a few neurons inside that cerebral cortex, please spread the word to your friends and colleagues and tell them that they need to get spelunking. Also, if you can take a minute to leave a review on your podcast provider of choice, and especially Apple Podcasts, that would greatly help the show and be so appreciated, provided it's positive. And if not, then just keep your pie hole shut and stay down in that cave. Let's keep spelunking.
This podcast is designed for informational purposes only and does not constitute any medical or surgical consulting advice or imply a development of any physician-patient relationship. The opinions of guests who are featured on the show are not necessarily the opinions of Dr. Barrett or the production team. This podcast is owned solely by Barrett Medical and Surgical Media, LLC. While the show is highly oriented for physicians and healthcare providers, anyone interested in the improvement of human performance and understanding will find this a welcome goblet to sip from, or guzzle. However, no representation or warranties are made in any way whatsoever on this podcast for any products, techniques, or other things discussed. Invited guests are not vetted by the Pod of Inquiry for their qualifications and may have a direct or indirect financial interest in what they present and discuss on the show. The Pod of Inquiry disclaims any responsibility from anything taken from the show and used personally or professionally. It is a responsibility of the listener to perform their own due diligence prior to the implementation of any ideas, products, techniques, or anything talked about on the show.